Hey everybody, thank you for joining me. First things first, give me a thumbs up in the chat to let me know if you are hearing me okay and if you're receiving everything okay. Yesterday had some pretty tough technical difficulties with my microphone. I'm using a brand new microphone today, so just let me know if you can hear me and everything's good. Hope you're doing well out there. It's Friday, it's time for an illustration masterclass. And this is an exciting one for me because it's brush centered and we have a new set of brushes to talk about, the Spring 2022 brush set. So once a quarter, yours truly, I sit down, I go into my little brush laboratory and I stew and I contemplate, and then I start going nuts. I start experimenting, I start going crazy, and I try and come up with brushes for all of you to play with and to enjoy. And so we do have a nice new set for everyone to enjoy right now. It's definitely available to download immediately in North America and should be rolling out to the rest of the world probably by the end of this week, if not at the latest by middle of next week. So if you happen to live in a region where you try to download the brushes and you notice that they're just not there at the top of the download page for the brushes, that would be the Spring 2022 brushes, just change the region at the bottom of the web page to United States, and you should be able to get the brushes. This is a nice little hack, okay, a little workaround for you. But Kyle, where is that page? Well, you got a couple options. You could go to Google and just type in "Get Kyle's Brushes." First result should take you right to that page where you sign in and grab the brushes. Or if you're in Photoshop, you could do this. Come to this little drop-down menu in your brushes panel, and here you see Get More Brushes. You tap on that, takes you to the same page. If you're in Adobe Fresco, go ahead and open your brushes panel with a list of brushes, and at the bottom of the list, tap on the little plus sign, and you will see an option there to discover new brushes. And there you go, you're going to be in brush paradise, brush heaven. All right, so let's say hi to some folks. Lamont is here. What's up? Yeah, that new mic sound. It's probably kind of echoey and not very well tuned, but it is what it is. I'm doing my best. I'm using an older microphone, but thanks. I'm glad you all can hear me. That's what's most important. You might also hear two other things. Violin. My daughter's practicing her violin in the other room, and right outside my window, somebody's mowing our lawn, and that is really loud. So I hope that's not coming through. Gang, it is what it is. We're here live. We're going to do some drawing and painting. We're going to do some drawing and painting with this very special brush set, okay? Spring 2022. It's fun. It's full of goodies. I'm really happy with it. It's one of my favorites now, and why don't we get cooking, okay? So here we go. We're going to be in Photoshop today, but like I said up front, you could use these in Fresco, folks. You can use them in Fresco. You can use them in Photoshop. Same deal. The brushes work beautifully everywhere you go. And I thought I'd do a kind of a semi-recreation of an illustration I posted a little while back when I was testing these brushes that was done in black and white. But I'd want to sort of try this in color. I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to try some experiments. I'm going to do some layering and just sort of give you some ideas for how you too might play with brushes in this way. This is a kind of drawing I do where I don't use a sketch. And I think a lot of times people are intimidated to work that way. But I want to show you that because you're working in a digital environment, one of the beautiful things is you can just experiment, you can play, and you can always undo, right? The process is endlessly reversible, infinitely flexible. You go forward, you go backwards, you undo, you use layers, you do whatever you want. All right, so who else is here? What's up, Jan? Is it Jan or Jan? I don't know, Leia, how you doing? And I see Bruce and Cryo and Wade and Steve and Vat. Hello. Umacorn, how are you, Umacorn? We're not drawing any shoe bills today, Umacorn, just so you know. I hate to tell you. All right, folks, let's get to it. Now, what I want to do is start out with this brush here in this brush set called the Marshal. Let me show you what that looks like. All right, we're gonna do a little background action here. This is gonna just be kind of like something to lay the groundwork. Now this brush, you might notice, you say, hey, how come the colors keep changing? Well, this is employing color dynamics, okay? If you're not familiar with the color dynamics, you should be because they're awesome. Over here in your brush settings panel, color dynamics allow you to, for each instance of the brush stamp that is applied to the canvas, to change the hue, the saturation, the jitter, the brightness, or all three, or just two, or whatever you want. and lots of other things. And you can set these values to be whatever you like. Really powerful stuff. But here we go. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to throw down some business. Okay. Less pressure means I'm going to reveal more texture and not really get the full effect of the brush, if you will. Okay, so that's what I want to do here occasionally. Just kind of mix it up here and there. Alrighty. So this is just kind of like a little base. I'm just getting things started. Okay, just getting cooking here. All right, now I've got so many things I could do, but the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use these pellet brushes. Now, I explained on Brush Hour that these brushes are named after something you probably would not guess. Hamster poop. Yes, folks, it's that kind of show, but in all seriousness, it really is named after that. We had the most wonderful, sweetest hamster of all time, Sniffles, who passed away about a year ago, I'm sad to say. But Sniffles, like a lot of hamsters, and in fact all of them, poops all day long. And there's these little pellets, and I just, for some reason, came up with this brush idea. And here's what it looks like. I can paint with these sort of pellet shapes in any direction I like, or I can do it in a way where they're all scattered and they use color dynamics, or I could do it in a way where they're scattered without color dynamics, or I could do it in a way where they actually follow the pressure of the brush to reflect the size that I'm painting. So for now, what am I going to do is I'm going to use this Pellets Alt brush, which allows me to paint in any direction. And I'm going to apply a bit of color dynamics to it. Now, this is important with the brushes, okay, in Photoshop and Fresco. You can customize these. You don't have to use them the way they are right out of the box, folks. You can absolutely customize them, make them do what you want. So even though this brush does not have color dynamics built in from the get-go, I'm going to turn them on. And I'm going to adjust the hue jitter a little bit, but predominantly I'm going to think about this brightness jitter. There's going to be a little bit of a difference there. Maybe a bit more hue jitter there, a bit more brightness jitter. See that? Just a little bit of variety. A little spice. All right. Throw in some spicy there. And over here, I'm just going to do this. Just kind of throw a bit of texture down. And you know what that is, gang? That is me kind of suggesting maybe that there's some sort of grass down there. Okay? We're going to have a lot of fun today with just making marks. That's what this is going to be about. Building an illustration by making marks, right? I have a rough idea of what I want in my head because it's based on this illustration I did very quickly in Fresco a little while back. I mentioned this at the top of the show. You can find this if you go to my Twitter or my Instagram, of a sort of a foresty kind of a scene with a guy just standing there kind of looking out over the landscape. So I'm just going to throw these like this, here and there. Okay. Sampling color as I go. All right. Come back in then with my Marshal brush. Now, the reason it's easy for me to get back to the Marshal brush is it's right here. The last 7 brushes I used are always stored up here in your brushes panel. Not everybody knows that. I always like to point that out. And I'm just going to kind of tap my canvas here and there just to throw some of that texture back in there. Some of that Marshal texture. Right? See that? Tappity tappity tap. There we go. Go a little darker. Tappity tap tap tap. All right, and we'll leave it there for now. I'm next going to slide on down this way to the Woodchop Joey brush. The Woodchop Joey. Look what that looks like. Here it is. Woodchop Joey. Now this one is going to give me the ability to control the opacity with pen pressure, and I like that. All right. Leia, you said you mentioned pressure. You're using a pen tool. I am using a stylus made by Wacom, and I'm using a Wacom Cintiq, which is a drawing tablet where you can draw on the screen. Very nice. All right. Pellets aplenty, says Wade. That is exactly what's going on. Pellets aplenty. Hola from Spain, Francisco. Hola to you. Gracias for being here. Can these brushes be loaded in Photoshop on iPad Pro? Kat, they absolutely can. Yes, indeed. Certainly. Alrighty, let's have some fun with this Woodchop Joey brush. I'm going to sample one of these slightly lighter colors here and continue to move upwards and downwards, but just kind of fill in a bit of space here, like this. So this isn't just white up here, okay? Grab some darker colors and occasionally just hit it with a bit more gusto. Okay? Like that. Bang, bang, bang. Back to that lighter color. What we're doing is we're just throwing down some texture and some color. And I'm gonna build on top of this all kinds of stuff in a minute here, but I just want to get things started with something interesting there in the base. All right? And just wait and see how this happens. You're going to enjoy this. I think you're going to enjoy this. This process, the way things can just sort of organically evolve and develop. All right? It's really fun to work this way. I think it's healthy to try new things, right? With art, you know, not with bad stuff. Right? Don't go trying a bunch of new drugs or anything. Okay, come on, folks. Stay in school. Don't do drugs. You know the drill. So there's that Woodchop Joey. I'm having fun with that. Gonna come on back to this wedge hunter and just occasionally interrupt and mess up this kind of area here. You can always undo if I feel I went too far, you know. I can do something like that. I can also slide on back up to our pellets, okay, here. And I can always just kind of come in here and do a little decorating with those pellets, like this. Whoops. There we go. All of this stuff is easy to play with and adjust and continue to just build up texture. Now here we are at the top of the list, Chef Maltese, named after Mr. Ryan Maltese. Who's Ryan Maltese? Well, he's a academic feller who I happen to be pals with. And did you know that all these brushes are actually named after, or most of these brushes rather, are named after some friends of mine? And I've never done that in a brush set before. I have named a few brushes in the past after family members. And there was one very special brush named after one very special friend of mine, John Hendricks, the Milton Hendricks pencil from about 3 years ago. But this is the first time I've really like named a whole brush set, mostly after some pals of mine. Let's go a lot lighter. We're going to go a lot lighter and a little bit cooler. A little bit cooler on the colors here. Kyle, do you have a favorite gouache brush from your set, says Lamont? Oh boy, phew, that's a tough question. I can't say that I do. You know, I like them for different things. I like these brushes for different things. Gosh, if I had to choose, maybe the gouache. This group I did called Gouache Golden, and there was one in there. I want to say it was just called Natural Edge or something like that. Got to revisit that and double check. I'm looking for a brush called Smitty. Where are you, Smitty? There you are. This one's similar, but allows me to go a little bit softer, kind of like that Woodchop Joey brush. Yeah, there was a brush in there, something like that, like Natural Edge, or I don't remember exactly, but and that one made me pretty happy, I think. All those Gouache Golden brushes, I was pretty happy about those. They were an addition to the gouache set after it had been out for a year or two. I just felt like it was time to update them and really push things, make them the best they could be, and those are some of my favorite brushes. And I actually did a painting with some of them not too long ago in an illustration masterclass of a carrot wearing eyeglasses. That might sound strange to you all, but it made sense in context because we were talking about editorial illustration, and it was like a mock assignment about do carrots actually, you know, can they improve your vision? Or at least help to maintain healthy vision, that sort of idea. Okay, that was sort of the gist of it. All right, you see how this is coming along? It's kind of fun, right? Let me zoom in for a moment. You can see all the rich texture that we're getting out of this, okay? And those color dynamics are in play, and those really help to keep things looking nice, okay? They really do. Any more questions? Let's see here. Any more questions from anybody? How is the brush flipping directions so quickly, says Judith? Well, that's one of the actual features of the brush. If you come into your shape dynamics, you will see that you have the option to flip at the X or the Y axis. So the brush stamp is going to flip, you know, vertically or horizontally. And that's why that's happening. You can make that happen randomly, and that's what's going on there. Pretty fun. Alrighty. So what I'd like to do is I'm starting to think about like how to break up the space here. And my idea is that sort of from the top third down, I want to have some indications of foliage, okay? But I want the foliage in the middle third to be lighter than the foliage in the front. I want the foliage in the front to have a harder or heavier contrast and be darker, brighter brights, darker darks, right? As I move away from there towards the background, I want things to recede and I want them to be a little lighter. Okay, that's kind of what I'm going for here. And one thing I'm going to do right now is, while I have this color right here, I'm just going to go a little darker. Okay, see that? It's not much darker. Maybe even a little lighter than that, maybe even more faint. So something like that. And I want to suggest some trees out there in the distance. Now there are lots of brushes I could use for this, okay? And there are different ways to do it. I could actually paint them, or I could make selections and paint inside of them. So to start with, I think I'm going to work with selections. I'm just going to make a new layer. Oftentimes I'll paint this kind of stuff on one layer, but for now, I just want to make a new layer in case I feel like doing some other funny business with this later, okay? So here I'm just painting some tree trunks. That's all I'm doing, all right? And these are going to be living out here in the background, okay? Like so. And occasionally we'll have a little branch pop over that away, or maybe this away, right? Just to make sure that we keep things interesting, right? Keep it interesting. Just using the lasso tool here. This is nothing fancy. And if you've seen it before, great, but if not, I recommend you watch an older episode of Illustration Masterclass where I created an illustration just using the lasso tool and some color fills. That was a really fun way to work, and I think there's a lot to learn from that, because you might think, well, you're kind of limited that way. How do you do anything good? The limitation's a good thing. It can really make you try to focus on one thing, which is shape. Okay, and that's the most important thing in that exercise. So there are a bunch of trees right there. I'll add a little bit of space, and I'll just throw one more kind of coming out at an angle like this, and that's going to be just a fun little way to kind of break that up. Have one little piece of it. Variety is the spice of life. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to add that variety here to those shapes so that they really are going to work that way. The brush I'm still using is this Smitty brush. So I'm just going to throw in some color like this. And what I'm going to do is I want to kind of tuck those back in space. And so an easy way to do this is I could paint over it with a lighter color by locking the layer transparency. So right here I can lock the layer transparency. And remember what I talked to you about, which is adjusting these brushes or customizing them. So here where it says flow, I'm going to reduce that flow to 40%, okay? And what I can do then is paint over these. And you see what it's doing? It's just kind of pushing them back a little bit into the distance. So they're not quite so bright, right? Another thing you do, of course, is just reduce the opacity like that, see? That really sets them back quite a ways. I'm going to be drawing some other things on top of this and making it so that the background gets softer in that area. But I'm going to use different brushes for that. So I think for this area here, where I talked about the middle third being a little lighter, I'm going to start playing with that now. And one of the things that I can do is I can use a brush like the Marshal or the Marshal Alt. And you know, typically because it has so much variety in the lights and darks, that would be problematic. But if I go to the color dynamics and reduce the brightness to just 5%, okay, now I have a lot more control. So if I grab a lighter color like this and I just throw some color in there like that, it starts to lighten all that up in a pretty consistent and predictable way. All right. And that layer, because it's separate, I can reduce the layer opacity like this. And what that's starting to do is take that whole area and it's just kind of setting it back a little bit into the background, right? So it's not totally in our face. It's not right up front and center. See that? All right. Let's see. Any questions, folks? Let's see. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Jorge, thank you. You love my brushes. I appreciate that. Applications for photography. Great question. You know, the truth is there really are no specific brushes for that because any brush could be used for any kind of really creative photography. You could be using textured brushes for photography for certain applications. You could be choosing to use really soft, airbrushy brushes for softening an area, for doing edge control stuff, for painting over an area lightly to set it back into the distance, you know. You could be painting in actual details into the photograph. They're really, I would say, I don't want to limit anybody in their thinking about what would be applicable for photography or not applicable. Anything goes depending on the kind of art you're trying to make with your photography. So I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but that is my answer. Quick comment about using any brush as an eraser. Now, if you have a North American keyboard, you can use, or English keyboard, you can use a tilde key to turn any brush instantly into an eraser. And what that's really doing is changing the brush's mode from normal to clear, okay? So the only way this works, though, is make sure that your layer transparency is not locked, all right? And let's say, for example, that I want to come back to my brushes and use that Chef Maltese brush as an eraser. Well, what I would do is hold down the tilde key and then just do this. Now I'm erasing with all that nice texture. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to keep these areas fairly well contained within that sort of square that I've already drawn on the outset there. All right. It's not like a hugely important deal, but it does, I think, make it look nicer. There we go. And I'm going to use the eraser again to just tidy up a bit of that edge there. And oftentimes it's the kind of thing I do towards the end, just to sort of clean stuff up a little bit, figure out how I want it to look. But in this instance, you know, since I'm here and I'm thinking about it now, you know, may as well just go ahead and do it. No big thing. Okay? No big thing. And there you go. All right. So, you know, I want to keep some of it irregular and have some bits pop in and out and so on. That's totally fine. I just don't want it to be too crazy. Okay? Not too crazy here, so just add a bit of information there. And then erase away just a bit of it too. There we go. All right, that's me being picky, gang. I can get picky just like anybody else. So we have these trees sort of set back in the distance there a little bit. Now what about having a tree like kind of more in the foreground? Well, that tree would be darker, right? It would be more pronounced, more obvious, easier to see. And so what I'll do is I'll create a layer for that tree. I'll give him his own little layer there. And what we're going to do is we're going to pop him right here. And there he goes, just like that. And don't worry, we're going to do some neat stuff with him to make him a bit more interesting. Don't you worry. Alrighty. So now I can refine this shape using the lasso tool, right? That's an easy enough thing to do. I can come in here and I can just do this. And forgive me if this microphone is really picking up a lot of noise because I'm tapping the screen a lot, I'm dragging my hand on the screen, and I know this is an older mic and it might not be so good at filtering out those noises. So if it's bothering your ears hearing the tap, tap, tap and the way that my stylus makes noise when I scrub and color on the canvas, well, I'm sorry, folks. All right, grabbing that color that I'm already using in here, but I'm going to just make sure that's just a hair lighter than that. And I'm going to actually warm it up a little bit and push in this direction here. And let's switch it over to, let's start with that Marshal brush, just like this, just because it's pretty to kind of see those nice divisions like that. I like that. And if I tap it here and there, hear that tapping sound? That's what I was talking about, sorry about that. Occasionally I'm just going to get something really interesting happening there with the bark, so to speak. And I just think that's really pretty. But speaking of bark, there is a brush in here called Barkin' Rob. Okay, and if you want to, you know, you could grab a brush like that and you can just kind of hit it here and there for some other pretty textures. Bang, 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 bang. See that? Oops. And that just goes a long way towards making it interesting. Or intéressant, as the French say. All right, so there's a brush, there's a tree that is much more in the foreground for us there. Alrighty. Returning to that Joey, where is he? Where are you, Woodchop? Woodchop Joey. Looking for Woodchop Joey. There you are. Gonna use this brush to erase the part of the tree here that's creeping outside of the boundaries of our illustration there. See how effective that is to just kind of make it sort of fade away and do its thing. Alrighty. So we do have some activity here in the middle, the mid-ground, so to speak. We're gonna increase that activity now with some other small bits of trees and details like that. All right. So first things first, because we have this one element here in the foreground, and I don't want it to be like the only thing. I just want to balance it a little bit over here on the right side. What I'm going to do is draw a shape like this that's going to cut across these other trees here. Like that. And it's going to have a little bit of a smaller branch there, like this. And then sort of like this area that looks like it maybe was fried by lightning or something, so it got broken off, okay? And we're gonna take that Woodchop Joey and we're just gonna, move this over here. And we're just gonna do this. And then hit it with some lighter colors on top, okay? Like that. And what I can do then is I can reduce the opacity like that, so it sets it back a little bit. But then we don't just have this one shape here that's like super bright and dominant. Okay. To resize my brush, I use the bracket keys, so left and right bracket keys. Over there on the right of your keyboard, just to the right of the letter P. And then I can erase with the brush here like this, and I can just sort of let it fade away a little bit like that. So, you know, why am I thinking about this kind of stuff? Well, that goes to this whole idea of, you know, with composition, wanting things to be interesting for the viewer. Wanting things to be interesting for the viewer, okay? Somebody who's looking at this piece, I don't want them to get bored. I want them to see things that attract their eye because of the variety, because of the way they're shaped. You know, like, would it be better to have this over here? You know, things like this. I can think about placement. I can think about where to stick one element or another element of the drawing. And this is the kind of stuff you gotta think about, and it's very important in the scheme of things. It's the difference between, you know, something being, you know, really dynamic and interesting, and something being just kind of or meh, right? Not trying to make any meh stuff here. It's definitely not the goal. So what you do is you vary your shapes, okay? And you make sure that whatever you're doing has enough variety in all aspects, so it's not just shapes, but also like a nice balance of darks and lights and midtones, a nice balance of details and more general areas, softer areas, sharper areas, you know, all these things that are opposites of one another. You try and make those balanced, okay, in an interesting way. Let's see, Cat looking forward to playing with these brushes. Cool, great. Rob, sorry you've been sick. Very sorry about that. Nobody wants to be sick. And let's see. Great. I'm glad the microphone is doing its trick. I thought there was some pretty bad background noise, but maybe it's better now. Bruce, thanks for the compliment. Glad you think it's looking good. Well, there's still more to go. Kyle, I'm curious, says Kevin, if you draw these out prior to the stream, are you just making it up as you go? I'm just making it up as I go. I mentioned at the top that I had done a specific drawing a few weeks ago that was not even actually honestly similar to this now, but I thought maybe I was going to do something similar to that. It was just a guy standing in the woods. I'm still going to put somebody in the woods here. I'm going to put a guy or somebody in here. I don't know. Towards the end. But I'm really just kind of playing, and I'm reacting to what I see. So that's sort of the method I'm employing at the moment. And I think that the brushes make that easier because they're going to do stuff that you don't necessarily expect them to do or whatever, and that can just sort of guide you, so that the way the marks that get made and stuff, there's things you just don't plan for, and I think that just kind of is what makes it so easy to work this way, because yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, but works pretty well. I think it works pretty well. We're gonna go more towards a yellow here, okay, and we're gonna go just a hair darker. We're gonna try putting a bit more of a warm kind of a glow here. Actually, I don't want to go quite that yellow, but a little more green. I want there to be enough contrast for that sun to read. Okay, and so that's what I'm aiming for here. Now, as I move away from it, it's okay for me to not be so not get so dark. But I just wanted to kind of make that really read right there. See that? Right there. I want that sun to read nicely back there. Just feels like the right kind of thing to break up all those straight lines that are there. You throw in a round shape. And that's what I'm talking about with the variety idea, right? As a design thing. Anyhow. Rob says this style would make a wonderful base for editorial illustrations. Sure, absolutely. Yeah, great. Okay, so as I look at this, if I zoom out, I can see like all the contrast and everything. This is a really handy trick. It's like stepping away from your art when you're working at an easel. You can zoom out really small and see how stuff reads, okay? And the thing I'm noticing right off the bat is that this is really dark. So I kept it on its own layer. Lots of options. I could lock the layer transparency and paint over it with a lighter color like this, right? That'll knock it back. But another thing you could do, of course, is you could open up your curves. And I did that with Command M. And then I could just do this. I could just sort of take it and with the darks down here, I could sort of lighten those like this. And now I think that's a bit less crazy, okay? So there's before and there's after. So maybe something in the middle. Let's try that again. Or, you know, use an adjustment layer. It's even better. So do this. Here, come down here. Curves. So I'm using an adjustment layer now. And we can do the same thing. We can just kind of brighten it up a little bit. We're going to clip this. Don't worry. We're going to clip this to the tree in just a second. But first, I'm just going to play with it a bit. There we go. I'm going to say, cool. I like the way that looks. Come over here. I'm going to hit Control and then tap over here and say create clipping mask, and that way it's just going to clip to the tree. All right, so before, after. There we go. Let's see how that works. Okay, it's a non-destructive workflow. It's good to have non-destructive workflows. All right. And these trees in the background, you know, remember they're on their own layer as well. There they are. And I could always increase their opacity as a way to build in a bit more contrast back there. It's nice to have all these options, right? So maybe I'll go to like 85. I think that looks pretty good. All right, and let me try something here really fast. I'm just gonna slide one of those over here and do a little flip horizontal. Rotate that. See how that looks. Maybe stretch that up a bit. Yeah, I think just having something there on that side might be good. Actually, I want it to be smaller, whatever it is. So I can just erase away some bits here. Forgive my being a little bit quiet here, but I'm just thinking. Sometimes, you know, I can draw and I can talk. Other times, not so easy. I gotta be concentrating a bit more on what I'm doing, right? If any of you out there ever do live streams, and I know some of you do, then you know it can be a little tricky sometimes to sort of balance talking while actually trying to do something halfway decent on the stream. So sometimes I just have to kind of be quiet for a minute and make sure that I'm making decent choices. Because I want you to see examples of things that work and look good, not just me gabbing about brushes, you know? There, so that feels nicely balanced. Let's erase away a bit of this here, just soften that up. Okay. All right, so we have this little space here, and that's where I was thinking about putting a figure, okay? But I also want to throw some foliage and stuff in here, because I want to show off some of the other good brushes we have, so check it out. We have shrubbed. What are we going to do with it? Well, let's make another layer. And here we go, gang. We're going to start with darks. So I'm going to go grab a really dark right there. I'm going to make it a bit greener, more saturated. And let's just do this. See that? Bang. And don't worry, I'll clean it up later. I'll clean it up. Let's just throw some like shrubby business here in the foreground a little bit. Okay? See how that works? It's a nice thing to do, to just add a bit of shrubbery. Any Monty Python folks out there? Bring us a shrubbery! Alright. Nice little leafy bits. Simple as can be. So easy to do. Look at that. It's too dark, so grab the lighter color, do the same right there like that. Bit greener. This also has a nice texture that kind of just really, I use really light pressure. It's a nice thing to just sort of go over an area and soften the transition, okay? Now what I do is I hit it really dark, and then what I do is on top of it, okay, I go lighter. And this is a trick you can use. See that? And that creates this depth that you want, where you're sort of saying, okay, I've got darker areas, that's the shadows, like stuff in the shadows. And then over the top of that, I can go with some lighter bits. Okay? And that pushes those into the foreground there a little bit, and that, because of what we said earlier, higher contrast is what we're aiming for then. But there are other leaves in here, like leaf mess, okay? Same thing, I can take the darks, throw some leaves in there, okay? Let's go even darker than that. Let's go like darker and greener, okay? And let's just hit a few spots. What about here in the foreground? Bang. Maybe not too much. Let's maybe like try and control myself a bit. There we go. It's nice to see also what that does to divide up those areas with some interesting shapes, right? Now I like this yellow color right here. So I'm just going to sample it and use it for some of those leafy bits. Bring some of those over here. Actually, let's bring them over here. There we go. I like that. I like that movement across this way. And I'll echo that a bit right here. Okay. There we go. And here in the background, I've got some other options. I've got these leaf mess alter. This is an alt of that one, which uses more color dynamics. And since I've got that lighter color, I could grab like this sort of a tree color here, and I can just throw some leafy shapes back there. Let's go back to that layer there where those trees are. Okay, these right here. And we're just going to go right behind them and do a bit of leaf work. Hang on a minute. There we go. Throw some of that leafy bit business behind there. So we're letting some of that foliage creep on up into the sky there, so it's not, you know, so that we get the sense that, oh, there's some trees and things back there, right? And I can add little lines, like you can reverse things out, grab some white, and this is where I could use a brush that has some line, like the Sauvy Inky, okay? And I can just do this, like break it up like this, da 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 da, throw some little lines in here and there. So sometimes you're working light, sometimes you're working dark. See what I mean? That's a handy little trick. You come over here and just sort of suggest some nice little branches. So that stuff isn't just hanging out there with no support, okay? And then we come back, get slightly darker. Go a little smaller. Remember that the leaves should be smaller as you go into the distance. That makes sense. So think about stuff like that. Don't just throw a bunch of leaves in the distance that are like really, really big. That wouldn't make sense, okay? And there you go. Now that trick I was doing just a minute ago, doing some sticks and things like that, do the same thing in the foreground, okay? Balance it out. So what I'll do is, here where I'm drawing all these leaves and stuff, is on the layer just underneath it, I can go ahead and grab like this color right here, this really, really faint color. And see this suave brush here, okay? When I get to this layer here, see how it really stands out? Because it's darker down there, so I'm getting more contrast. So I can do things like this. I can just throw little lines back there. And in here. And that really helps to sell the idea that this stuff is connected to the ground and to branches and to things like that, right? This is a handy little trick. All right, now from a distance you don't see that much, but if I zoom in, you know, you'll see how that's really a helpful little thing to do, okay? You can erase away all this stuff that gets outside of the edges. No big deal. Easy to do. Bye-bye. Alrighty. So, that's coming along. It's coming along. It's coming along. I want to take this area, as I squint and look at it, I want to kind of tamp it down. So what I'm going to do is, oh, by the way, there's a little trick for you folks. Hold down the Command key and tap on a layer like this, and you'll know which layer that is, okay? And I could use the leaf brush to actually erase right there. And that'll help to just sort of keep that same sort of quality to it, but get rid of some pigment, right? And then I can come down here to this layer and I can soften that up. Same brush, just getting rid of some business there. I just want that to be a little softer, a little lighter. I can use the yellow to kind of help to unify all that, okay? Like this. Same over here in front of this little guy. Like that trunk of that tree. There we go. To not be so bright there. All right, there we go. And this is where I'm going to stick my figure, okay? And so this is where I'm going to use a color that'll really stand out. So what I'm going to do is, since everything here is pretty greenish, right? I'm going to work with a red since it's a complementary color, all right? So here, we're going to put somebody who's going to be just a walking in the woods. I'm going to use the GeoBot brush for this, just so it's not totally flat. Okay. And I'm going to then, they're going to be wearing a hood here, so we're going to just do this. Selections are your friend. Use selections. See that? Just throw a little face in there. And I can outline this area here where there'd be a shadow. Okay. And then I can do this, so we have a nose. Use that same, this dark color here. And they're just going to be walking through the woods, and I'm going to make it so that we'll see part of the legs here, okay? But then a lot of it's just kind of going to disappear into the foliage, okay? So we're going to do this. Make sure we keep that sweatshirt kind of overlapping. Okay. And for the pocket, I'm just gonna do like a little sort of a liner thing. So it's gonna be like one here, and then this little strip right here. And that's gonna be like a nice little pop of contrast. Okay. Trust me. See that? And let's grab that Sauvy Inky. And we're just gonna do this. We're gonna just do a little eye right there and a little eye right there. And I'm just gonna get a bit more specific with the shape here, a little bit more specific. Like this. I'm actually modifying my shapes here a little bit because I'm picky. I like this idea of a silhouette maybe. I think that could be pretty nice right there. And then I just take all these foliage brushes to finish it off. Okay, so for example, this leaf mess or fresh leaf, we haven't used that one yet. And I'm gonna reduce the size, and as an eraser, just do this. Make it so that, you know, it kind of covers up what's happening there. And final thing, just do this. Grab your Sauvy Inker there, and throw a few little birdies up in the sky there, okay? And we'll knock those back to about like 60% opacity. And if you really want to have fun, go ahead and throw a layer on top of the whole thing and set it to overlay. And there you go, gang. That is how you do it. That's how you do it. Hope you enjoyed that. I had a good time, and I hope you did too. It's the weekend. Everybody go out there, and if you got some free time, try this. Try some drawing and have some fun. I wish you all the best. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. Please remember to be kind, and I'll say ciao for now.